Let's dive in now to actually working with mortgage brokers, loan officers. What is it going to take in this part of the industry to be able to do mortgages with blockchain? Because you're doing a lot of work with Fannie and Freddie and coming out with some amazing products that I think are truly is going to change the industry. So it's super exciting.
Thank you. I love this part of the conversation. This touches on so many things that do good. I get chills. I almost want to cry, tear up a little bit about the future implications of blockchain and the use case in capital markets. So let's dive in. In 2018, I filed for the patent application for anything that touches with blockchain, real estate, and non-fungible tokens. And we'll get into that in another section, what those are. I was a little bit early. It's kind of lonely in this room, kind of sitting there by myself for about 4 years. And then at the end of 2021, general counsels from title, from capital markets, from very large firms started to come up to me and they were like, "Hey, Teresa, did you know blockchain can do this?" And I was like, "Yeah, guys, been here for a while, but good to see everyone and let's get this going." So Consortia is my second blockchain company. In my first blockchain company, we tackled the derivatives market. We saw that there was a huge opportunity for blockchain to increase transparency coming out of the Great Recession. And in that project, I had to read all of Dodd-Frank. That was many a late night. And I think it was between 2 and 4 in the morning, this one night where I was reading it. And it said that every bank and lending institution has to have a ledger of every asset that they own. Oh, blockchain is so obvious for me. And I was like, wow, this solves Dodd-Frank. And so I think that's what is really so essential, that the capital markets see this as a technology, just pure technology, no crypto, just pure blockchain as a ledger. And it really has taken until the end of 2021. We had changes in regulations that said that the appraisal can be done digitally. And I see this as the needle that really pulled everything through. So at the same time, we're getting feedback from the GSEs, that's Fannie and Freddie, saying they want this on blockchain. I'm like rejoicing and doing cartwheels in my head. I'm like, this is awesome, right? Like, we're building more transparency. I get really excited. I'm easy to excite, I guess, especially about stuff like this. What's also really interesting, if you've ever read the clauses in your mortgage agreement, the mortgage company has the right at any time to go into your property. That is phenomenal to me. They never would, I don't think. It'd be really hard to schedule that, like who would go out. But it really gives you insight into the rights that they have to see their asset. So how do we create this index of information that the capital markets really want and actually legislatively are supposed to be able to see? So in working with some of our business partners, we have created what's called the certified listing. So let's take it from the top of manufacturing real estate inventory to go to market. So we have the house, we have the realtor who signed the listing agreement. Now, before that listing goes on the market, there is underwriting of the asset that can be done. Now, we've been underwriting our clients, the human, and getting them pre-approved and pre-qualified for years. Like, you would never submit an offer anymore without saying these are the proof of funds and or this is the financing. Well, what about the asset itself? The asset's been there for 5 years, 20, sometimes 100 years. We should be able to categorize what happens with this asset. And that's the idea here, is to put everything that we can onto the ledger ahead of people going to bid on the property or people making offers. And so what we can do now is we can do the floor plan of the property using technology. Remote Val is one of our partners in this. And we can do the title work and make sure that the title of the property is completely clean before the listing goes on in the market. And a lot of this stuff, especially the inspections, all the inspections, this is how we package inventory to go to market in San Francisco. And I sit on the shoulders of giants in San Francisco who have built the industry for decades, that ecosystem of one of the strongest real estate markets in the world. And those properties fly off the shelves. You often hear about San Francisco people waive their inspections and they waive their contingencies. Well, it's not because they're letting go of their rights. All of this work has been done ahead. And now we have this tremendous opportunity to take this best practice and share it with the rest of the United States and say, this is the right way to list our inventory for sale. So here's an example. This is our first certified listing. This is so exciting for me to say. So this floor plan was done. Right now at the time of this recording, Fannie Mae will accept this for 90% financed offers, and it's for conventional offers of property. So this was minted as a token, as a non-fungible token on consortia, and this is the file that opens up, and then this file can be shared with capital markets and any lender that's looking at a property. And the same thing goes for the title report. What was really interesting in our first use case was there was a cloud on title. And that was the original token that was created and put onto the blockchain. And the cloud was no fault of the property, no fault of the current sellers actually. Something was actually missed in the last sale of the property. We were able to find it, identify it, and then remove that. Imagine if we had waited till we were in the transaction. That impacts our days on the market.
Absolutely.
And nobody wants to run that clock up because it's expensive for the consumer. Let's think consumer first. That is a terrible experience. Well, we can't close. Oh, we're not moving into our house. Can we get the house? I don't know if we're going to get the house. Like these terrible conversations that start to happen. Let's get rid of as much of that as we can. And we can do that with transparency and blockchain. So then also as a practitioner, we really track our statistics, right? We want to keep those days on the market. We love to highlight, I was able to sell this property and go into contract. My personal best was 3 hours. I loved that. Like it was already sold before it even hit the market. And I'm sure there are people listening to this video who are like, 3 hours, that's a long time. Why did it take you so long? I feel like that's something my mom would say to me, like, really, you think you're good? You're not. Like, that was 3 hours too long, right? So the idea here is that we're able to fly through as much of this escrow and underwriting process as possible, really for the benefit of the consumer. And here are some amazing unintended consequences of blockchain that I never saw coming back in 2018. Full disclosure, like I am sick of blockchain, hate it, wish I could put it in a dumpster and set it on fire. I've said that already in this training. I can't emphasize that enough. What inspires me to come back to the project is all the things that we can do for the consumer for the benefit of the American dream. I am an immigrant and I believe in this more than you will ever know. My mom made a huge sacrifice to come here to this country. And so I believe in American housing. It's the opportunity that anyone can come here and own real estate. And so because of blockchain, we can address several things here. Fair housing. There's a lot of bias that still exists in appraisals. Even where I live in Marin County, there was a swing of $500,000 in a biased appraisal that happened because the family selling was Black. And they fully documented it was a trap, it was a study. And people got caught. So by using technology, by doing this appraisal process digitally, we're able to scrub and sanitize the data and move it through this process without that bias. The other thing is, in some areas of the country, it's really tough to get an appraiser to come out. And not enough people are going into appraisal work as a profession. And as a result, it gets harder and more expensive to get these appraisals done. Last year, I paid $1,900 out of pocket to pay for an appraisal for a customer. And that gets expensive. Who can really budget for these huge costs? So now we're providing more access to housing and we're reducing the cost of the transaction itself by getting this work done ahead of time. So some of the features about a certified listing is that we're able to remove these clouds on title, these encumbrances that exist that we might not know about until later in the escrow process that can really hang us up. We're able to reduce those costs. Extending escrow is expensive for our clients, isn't it? They have to start paying points for every extension that happens to keep that rate low, especially in environments where the interest rates are going up continuously. So we just make this whole experience better for our customer. So the timeline to get a certified listing done. We want to start this process about 2 weeks before a piece of real estate goes online. And this gives us time to do other kinds of things to the house, such as paint the walls, clean the house. So it just becomes part of our pre-listing, pre-marketing package. We order the title report in a RESPA compliant way. We've worked through all of these legal issues. We order the appraisal and the floor plan. We can pay ahead to get this process done, or we can pay this at closing by using one of our finance partners. And so I think in summary, this certified listing process is just huge to bring so many benefits to the consumers and to the home buyers.
I love that. And I think one of the things that we had talked about when you first showed this to us is that for everybody watching on the real estate, on any side actually, but for the realtors out there, this is one of the hardest parts for us, is that we don't know when we're going to close. And, we're hoping to close in 30 days. Sometimes it goes to 45 days. But really, I think you had said that with the work you're doing with Fannie to bring this to market is that it goes from that down to potentially closing in 10 to 14 days. So that's enormous to people. I mean, that makes the difference of people, from where they're moving out of, and just the ability to not waste money like you were talking about. So can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. The timeline has never been tighter to get, it's a domino effect, right? Last year, we were calling people 5 transactions deep into this, saying, like, they were calling the first person, how quickly can you close because we have to drive across country for a job relocation? And it just impacts so many people along this chain. Also, a financed offer now has the certainty of close just as good as an all-cash offer.
Right.
And in these kind of environments with tight inventory, and we have Wall Street coming in and just buying so many properties,
Right.
Financed offers, the American dream, is becoming less and less accessible to the average consumer. So how do we make their offers more competitive? I think that's something that I'm really passionate about, to keep that as part of, keep our eye on the consumer and making sure that the American dream is real and tangible for them still.
Yeah, I love that. And I know that many of us over the years have done what we called certified listings, where we would say to the seller, okay, let's do this before we put it on the market. Let's bring in the home inspector. Let's fix everything in the home that's higher than $500 or more, just so that nothing comes up. Let's bring in an appraiser so that we know what the potential value of the property is before we put it on the market. But for us to have a systematic way, in conjunction with Fannie and Freddie, approved. Now, you were saying that this is conventional, so talk a minute about the whole FHA or anything that's not conventional, any other lending type that's not conventional. What's happening right now with Fannie and Freddie, and what's the projection for that?
Yeah, so we're just testing this out now,
Right.
and we're making sure that it works. And we're learning a lot of things that don't work about this process. In the beginning, we were saying we only want certain lenders who are going to be able to ingest this data to be part of this program. That doesn't work so well. We have to make sure that it's any lender, like bring your own lender, and anyone can ingest this data and work through this process. That's huge for us. So we're learning how to take this back to Fannie and Freddie as workable, right? Seeing this through several different transactions, and then have that become part of the process. Through one of our business partners, he just landed one of the largest lenders and largest banks in the country that will focus on VA loans.
Wow.
And I think that's just huge. The American dream for the people in our service people who come in and help just the country so much, we're able to give back to them through this process. And I think VA loans have traditionally been some of the hardest to get
Exactly.
buyers to accept. And so now we're going to be able to build blockchain in as a solution to make sure that the VA loans are acceptable.
I think that's huge, because a lot of them struggle so much that they want to use their VA loan, but then they feel pressured to do something else just because it's just so hard to get a seller to accept it. So I think that's enormous. Talk a little bit more about the remote val, because a lot of people don't realize what's involved in remote evaluation, how that works from a functional perspective for those people watching that are actual agents on boots on the ground. What would they be doing in that process to make sure that they're doing their part to get all this through?
Yes. Okay. So great point. Sometimes I go too quickly, and there are some really good points that I forget, like definitions of things. So anyone with a smartphone that's, say, like an iPhone 12 or newer, or a newer Android phone, the agent ahead of the listing can go through and do the floor plan ahead of time, and then that floor plan can be shared. Sometimes in some of these loans, the floor plan is enough, and you can get through the appraisal phase of the loan contingency just with that floor plan. Now, if that's not acceptable, what can be done is the digital appraisal. So this is more in depth. So I think of it as like a FaceTime app where the practitioner right? Like think about who goes into a transaction, right? Like if I'm selling your house, I have an incentive to get paid faster. So I want to make sure that that appraisal happens faster. This is just like coin operated brass tacks business practice, right? So I'm incentivized to get that appraisal done. I can go do that as a real estate practitioner with a licensed appraiser on the other side of that FaceTime-like app. It's the remote val app. And then the appraiser can tell me, okay, take a photo of that corner and it'll show the dimensions. Now stand here and do the measurement. So everything is digitized and sanitized. So we remove the bias of this as well, which is huge. And so this appraisal report can then be sent over to the appraiser's desk, and this can then be turned within 3 to 5 days. Imagine that, like the second you go into escrow, you're like, cool. Like the EMD might not even have been sent into escrow. Think about how quickly these transactions can now start to happen. This is huge. And so we just fly through that part of underwriting instead of waiting 14 days to get that appraisal back.
I'm sure everybody listening is so excited about the possibility of what you're discussing regarding the certified listings. So do you mind kind of diving in a little bit more and letting everyone know how they can get started with this?
Absolutely, yeah. So if you go to the RE Consortia website, there's a link there that says get started with your certified listing. Just send us an email. This is going to be built out into a much more robust form as we go, and tell us the address of the property, and we will connect you with all the parties that get all of this done and packaged. And there is a financing option to make sure that you pay at closing, which is huge to have this kind of partnership with financial markets to make sure you're not coming out of pocket even more than you already do for your marketing activities. We want to make this as easy for the sellers and the sellers' agents to do this in the process. So yeah, just reach out to us. I think 14 days is a really reasonable lead time. As soon as you maybe sign that listing agreement, just ping us and we'll get that ball rolling for you.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.